Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out, where we explore different aspects of the law from the unique perspective of our husband and wife team. The inside perspective comes from David Sussler. He's Associate General Counsel at National Material LP. The outside view from Tina Martini, a partner at DLA Piper here in Chicago. I'm Andy Shaw, President and CEO of the Better Government Association, and your host for these segments. Today, this month, as it were, we're going to talk about being proactive, and so that can only start one place, with each of you telling me what in the world we're talking about. When I say being proactive, what does that mean you have to do? Think before you leap or something like that?
Well, that's always a good place to start. I would say for clients, being proactive means being at least a few steps ahead, in a very positive way, meaning that you look at what's happening today and you think about what the likely natural course of events will be with the balls that are in motion today. And then you sort of think about, okay, well, what is our client doing? What are they trying to achieve? With the balls in motion today, what is likely to happen 3 steps ahead, 5 steps ahead, what have you? And then sort of counseling and guiding the client from that place. And also doing that same sort of exercise for yourself. So it's not just about being that way for your clients, but also being that way with respect to your career and your personal life as well as your professional life.
How do you handle proactivity?
Well, in much the same way Tina described, and I would add, to put that into practice, you can look like, call me first sometimes. Let me know in advance there are things I need to be thinking of, things that I should be considering that I may not be.
And how has your capacity for proactive behavior changed over the years? I presume that as you get more experience, you have a better sense of how to anticipate and how to think ahead. How has it changed for each of you? Did you start out with little sense of the proactive potential and have to develop it, or is it there from the beginning?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think when I look at the trajectory of my career, I think when you're a junior attorney, you really try to focus on the project that's in front of you and doing the best job you can on that project and really just hitting it out of the park. But as you accumulate experience, as you said, both with respect to certain types of matters as well as certain types of clients, big and small, from different from a geographic perspective, from a business sector perspective, you accumulate a lot of experiences, and that gives you a series of data points that enables you to figure out with every new matter and every new client that you encounter going forward, you draw upon that experience and you have a certain, predictability, as it were, depending on what certain facts and circumstances look like. But you also, as you get older, realize that there are outside forces, global economy, global business, war, all of those different things that could impact how a client views things. And also there's an element of unpredictability. So I think as I've gotten older, I've really realized that a lot of what happens in the world is somewhat unpredictable, and that there's a lot of serendipity involved as well.
Well, that's what I would say, David. It makes me wonder if the more experience you have, the less you try to be proactive, because so many things can get in your way, and it's impossible to anticipate a lot of outcomes, as Tina points out. I mean, I'm not talking about 9/11, I'm just talking about the behavioral things that change cases and client situations, the P&L statement changing drastically in 1 quarter. I mean, can you be too proactive, or do you have to be always to a certain degree proactive?
Well, I think as you get older, as you progress in your career, you're not older but more experienced, you develop a sense of judgment based on the experiences that Tina was talking about, and you gain a certain level of confidence. So you understand, I've got pretty good judgment. You don't, in the day-to-day practice of law, you don't always have the opportunity to be proactive. Sometimes you have to be reactive. Lawsuits, you're going to be reacting to the lawsuit. But you can take that lawsuit, and especially as you build upon your judgment, you can give advice to your client as to how you might prevent a future similar lawsuit, for example. Yes, there are things that happen in the world that you can't predict the outcome, but that doesn't mean you can't give advice and counsel to a client that helps them to better account for what might be coming down the pike. And it could be simply ask your client some questions to get them to think about things they may not have thought about. And you draw upon your judgment and experience to ask those questions.
And then, you go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, and sometimes when I'm working with a client, I know that there's a lot of unpredictability that's inherent in the situation. What I will do is say, okay, I'll look at it from almost like a decision matrix or a decision tree perspective and say, okay, I see 4 or 5 potential scenarios happening, and actually preparing the client for each of those scenarios, knowing that only one will come to pass, but at least having them wrap their head around what the different scenarios are likely to be.
Right, and it may be just as simple as explaining the variables rather than assuming that I, as the client, the expert in my business, or that I've already thought of all of those things. Don't leave that to chance.
And maybe it doesn't matter whether it's the client or a coworker, but let's say each of you has the assignment of providing a few tips to a young associate or a young general counsel in your office, somebody brand new, who comes to you and says, so what's with this being proactive thing? What do you tell them?
A young lawyer, look, a young lawyer without any experience needs to tread lightly with a client, because they don't want to come across as knowing something, pretending to know something they don't actually know. But again, even young lawyers can ask questions, ask smart questions, but ask questions. And maybe it's not initially your first or second year associate, you've never spoken directly with a client. Maybe ask your partner questions. Use a colleague, use a coworker to bounce ideas off of, so that you get practice.
And I would also say, I would actually say, that's a great answer. I would also say, sometimes it's as easy as really just taking a step back and saying, okay, if I were in that client's shoes, how would I view this situation? What would I want? What would I need? And you have to look at it not only from the perspective of the organization itself, but the individual client, the person as well as the professional for whom you're doing the work. You've got to understand what their role is in the organization with respect to this particular matter. What does this person have at stake? And if you sort of put yourself in that person's shoes and say, okay, if I were in this situation, this is what I want to know, this is how I would react, this is what my hot button would be, this is what I would consider a success, this is what I would consider a failure. When you ask yourself all those questions, then you're able to be a lot more proactive than if you just sort of only look at it from the outside counsel perspective.
This is more of a yes or no because we're running out of time, but so it sounds like you're saying that when you're young and inexperienced, you're going to be a little more reactive, and you probably ought not to try to be excessively proactive until you have a little more experience. When you develop a little gravitas and experience, then you can be a little more proactive with credibility.
I would say that
maybe that's dead wrong.
I don't disagree. I do disagree with that. It's going to proactivity will manifest itself differently. Young attorneys can be proactive about their careers. They can be proactive in learning. They can be proactive about, like we said, ask questions, give suggestions to your partner, the senior associate you're working with, for example, that demonstrates you're trying to learn and grow. You just don't try to fool a client.
That's what I was going to say. It's fine to be proactive internally. It's a little harder to be excessively proactive with a client before you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's much easier for a young attorney to be more proactive with the partners and the more senior attorneys with whom they're doing work.
Right.
And I think that making a concerted effort to shadow those attorneys, to ask the good questions like David said, will just enable them to get the skills and just the perspective that is needed as they get more seasoned as a lawyer to be more effectively proactive.
But you both agree that proactivity is an important tool, an important trait to do well in your business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're in a world now in the legal profession, especially with people in private practice, where it's a flat market share, like a flat market at this point. So it's, in many ways, some people characterize it as you need to steal market share from others. And I think by being proactive, that's one of the relatively few differentiators between service providers.
Right, it's like, don't just sit at your desk waiting for work to walk across it. Do something to get work across your desk or to make a difference for your client or the partner, whoever you're working for. That's it, and it's can be that simple. It doesn't have to be that complex.
Okay, being proactive. This has been a proactive segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out. At least we tried to make it a little bit proactive with David Sussler and Tina Martini. I'm Andy Shaw. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another topic next month, so join us.